Today I will go through the thesis template. I will also provide master and PhD thesis templates in the material of the course. Let's agree on one thing. The stage of reading should accompany you in every step of your research. You need to know and to learn. Each time you read, you gain more knowledge about your topic and you understand more about your research. Also, reading will keep you updated with all latest in your research area. Remember, reading is one key of successful writing. What about writing? Writing your results all the way up till the point of writing thesis makes writing easier for you. After a few weeks of starting your research, you start to write your results to make sense of the data you obtained. You can even flavor your writing with some references that talked about similar results. Therefore, write your results in one file and start to interpret them and reference similar work in another file. Then when time comes to write your thesis, you can merge the two files and name one section the results section and the other section discussion section. You need to be familiar with the types of writing in research. Either you are working on a small project or summer project, you collect data and you will need to write assignment, which is similar to short paper, or you are working on your master or PhD project and you will have large amount of data that you need to write. For that, you have two options. Either you write thesis by publication or you write thesis without publication. First, let's discuss each writing method benefits and drawbacks. I will start with thesis by publication because it suits all undergraduate students working in their summer project or graduate students working on their thesis. The benefit of thesis by publication is that you get to write each part separately. You finish lab work, you write, you publish, finish lab, write, publish, and so on. Therefore, it suits all types of projects, small or large. If you are a graduate student, the thesis by publication is a little bit challenge because you can include only published or intended to publish work. And you need to publish at least 2/3 of your research to be able to use thesis by publication. We saw the steps of writing and publishing research papers. Now, if you want to submit thesis by publication, all you need to do is to collect the published or intended to publish work together and add abstract for the whole thesis, literature review, which is larger than the introduction section in each paper, and method series in the method section. Finally, add a conclusion at the end that covers the whole work, and you can flavor this part with possible future work. The references for papers and the references in the rest of the thesis should all be gathered at the end of the thesis, and you are done for now. The good part of the thesis by publication is that examiners can't argue much about your results. It is already published. This is a template for a PhD thesis. The difference between master and PhD thesis is a cover page only. Each university has guidelines on how to submit your thesis, the page size, borders, and some even may have a template to fill. If your university doesn't provide you with a template, you can use this template. You can just paste your thesis inside the template or start writing in the template directly. As I said before, I provide those two templates for master and PhD thesis in the material of the course. Usually you need to add the university logo in the first page header only. Then you write the thesis title, submitted by whom, and the type of submission. If it is a PhD, you type submitted in total fulfillment of the requirement for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy. For master, you write the thesis is submitted in partial fulfillment of the requirement for the degree of master of your major, science, pharmacy, or any other major. This is the only difference between master and a PhD thesis. Of your major, science, pharmacy, or any other major. This is the only difference between master and a PhD thesis. Then you write your branch name, if it is chemistry, physics, or drug development, for example. Then you name the department, the school, the college, the university name, and the address, country, and finally the month and the year of the submission. The second page is your abstract. In the abstract section, you need to write keywords. Choose the most used words in your thesis, such as insulin, protein, or any other words you used it most often in your thesis. In the next page, you need to provide a statement of authorship. In this statement, you need to state that this is your work and only you, and no one submitted this work before. Moving to the conference presentations and publications, acknowledgement, where you acknowledge your supervisors, funds providers, and any other collaborators. In the dedication section, you can thank your family and the people supported you during your study. Moving to the abbreviation page, you will need to provide all words abbreviated in the thesis. You can write them in a table, but you need to remember that you need to mention the full name and the abbreviation between two brackets when first mentioned in the body of the thesis. You will need to provide 3 tables: table of content, list of figures, and list of tables used in the thesis. Also, you need to provide the page number of each entry. Start by Chapter 1, Introduction and Literature Survey. Chapter 2, Methods and Experimental. In here, you will need to include the principle of each method and the full calculations. Yes, you may have written this part in your papers, but you will need to elaborate and give full information in this chapter. Chapter 3 is your first part of your research. If you are submitting thesis by publication, you will need a preamble, which is a short intro to your article. The second part will be your article. The third part should include any additional information or any further studies that weren't included in the paper or supplementary information of your paper. Include any additional information or any further studies that weren't included in the paper or supplementary information of your paper. If you are submitting thesis without publication, this chapter will be divided into small intro, your results, discussion, and finally conclusion of this part. Some students show all thesis results in one chapter and add discussion for the whole thesis in another chapter. Although their thesis will be organized results chapter and discussion chapter, but when come to read their thesis, you will be lost between large amount of data introduced in the results chapter. Then in the discussion, you will fail to follow which results are discussed. To make it easier for readers, split your thesis into sections, and in each section, put results, discussion, and the conclusion together in one chapter. Moving to the fourth chapter, if you are submitting thesis by publication, you will keep adding chapters in the same way until coming to the last 2 chapters, summary and general conclusion chapter of the whole work, and the references chapter. For the summary and the conclusion chapter, for example, if your thesis was multiple studies on a drug that was tested, try to include a summary of what the whole thesis talked about and add conclusion that the drug was good or bad and what is the future work you want to achieve. Finally, type your references chapter and follow the guidelines of the school in referencing and use the correct style you want to achieve. Finally, type your references chapter and follow the guidelines of the school in referencing and use the correct style. In some theses, students use figures or graphs in their thesis introduction section without acquiring permission, which may result in the rejection of the whole thesis. Other students refuse to use other researchers' published figures or graphs, which make their thesis introduction sound very boring and criticizing. Better to use published materials, but after asking permission for reuse. Some journals have automatic methods in acquiring reuse permissions, which make it easier to obtain. Some don't. Still, you need to flavor your thesis introduction with figures or tables of other people's work. Another thing, if you published your work, you will still need permission to use the published work in your thesis. All journals, once you send them your request that you will use your published paper in your thesis, they will grant you the permission, but still you need to acquire